Some of the hardest problems in the world exist far above the planet. Our job? To launch the smartest solutions, to protect our satellites, clean up our clutter, to propel breakthroughs in propulsion, to learn more about our place in the universe, to outpace emerging threats. Every day, the Aerospace Corporation uses the latest technologies to ensure our nation's safety and leadership in space.
Hi, and welcome to the Space Policy Show. We have a great episode for you today. We're talking about futures mapping for space in 2021 with Kara Cunzeman. As always, you can find us on Twitter using hashtag the Space Policy Show, and we would love it if you would sign up for our news alerts at aerospace.org/policy. Welcome to this episode of the Space Policy Show. Today, we are excited to hear from the Center for Space Strategy's lead futurist, Kara Cunzeman, as she demonstrates how to use the newly released Pathfinder's Guide to the Space Enterprise to answer questions including, what critical uncertainties will shape the future of space? And is it possible to control our own futures by better understanding the cross-cutting influences we face today? Kara is focused on cultivating formalized methodologies in futures thinking and helping the enterprise adequately prepare and proactively shape the future through innovative approaches across strategy, acquisition, S&T portfolio management, policy, and operations. Welcome, Kara, and take it away.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. We decided to do a little Q&A with Kara today, so I'll go ahead and get started on that. Kara, thanks for joining us again on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Colleen.
Yeah. So this is, everyone, this is Kara Cunzeman, the lead futurist for the Center for Space Policy and Strategy at the Aerospace Corporation. I wanted to start off, Kara, for people who don't know, what exactly is strategic foresighting and how did you get into it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So strategic foresighting, kind of at its simplest form, really are the tools and methods for guiding ourselves through uncertainty, thinking about, a range of possible futures, not just a single future, so that we can make better decisions in the present. And I got into foresighting really through the work that I do here at Aerospace. I think about 4 years back, I was working on an internal project here at Aerospace and really looking at how do we spend our internal science and technology dollars so that we maximize our impact for the future. So really the fundamental foresighting question. And that's what led me to go get trained at a place called Institute for the Future in Silicon Valley. And I got certified in foresighting. And that really woke me up to this whole new world of the academic practice of strategic foresighting, but uniquely applied to space and to the kind of systems of systems thinking and fielding capability.
Yeah, so, and I understand that there are a lot of course, large companies who use this kind of technique to, see what their marketing is going to be and to be a kind of plan for the future. So now you're applying it to the space enterprise, which tell us why you're here today. We're going to kind of jump into some things, and I know we invited you, but there's more to it than that. So what are you doing here today?
There absolutely is. Yeah. So I actually look at strategic foresighting as kind of this constant look at renewal and transformation. And I think kind of as we are embarking on a new year, this is really the right time to reflect on just how far we've come, also where we might go. And so I'm just kind of here today to have a great conversation with you, Colleen, to provide our listeners just a few thoughts kind of as we look back at 2020. And then, of course, as we look at 2021 with fresh eyes and bright ideas, and of course, hope, right, that we can create a better tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. It has been a very tough year for a lot of people. What kinds of things have you been seeing that do you think are going to be most impactful for?
Well, I think, we obviously can't be living in just our space bubble. Listen, 2020 was really rough. Many of us have lost loved ones. All of us have definitely had moments stolen with family and friends. There's been immense economic impacts. Many people's livelihoods have been put on the brink. Many of us are juggling, working, and caring for children and being their teachers all at the same time. And of course, we've seen kind of the brittleness of our supply chains. But I think if you look kind of forward, we've really proven out the resiliency in a world of fragility. And there's been a lot of like silver lining benefits, right? We've been able to spend more time with immediate family, less time on the road. Whether we like it or not, we've been kind of pushed into being more connected via virtual means. And this has been really important. I think it's showing the future of, digital infrastructure. But I think for me, what stands out most is it's been giving us the opportunity to focus on what really matters most. And this is also an opportunity for us to strengthen in the skills that we all need to navigate in a complex and disruptive world. And it may be a tough lesson to learn, but if we master these skills now, we're going to be far better off when other disruptions are coming, and they're definitely going to come. I guess just kind of, putting on my space hat, amidst all of this kind of massive change and uncertainty, space has done incredibly well. Amongst kind of like these really immense pressures and unique circumstances that this year has brought with it. So anyways, I guess I'm looking forward to kind of diving in a bit deeper and talking about what we've seen in 2020 and how we can apply strategic foresighting to see what might come in the future.
Yeah, I think we have a really cool graphic that you shared with us that kind of can kind of explain to people a little bit more about foresighting. And so let's show that and tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can kind of walk us through this, especially for those who may not be familiar. Just as a reminder, at its simplest level, strategic foresighting really is just a set of tools and methods to kind of systematically investigate possibilities of the future. And it's really about helping us navigate inevitable uncertainty that faces us. So the focus is on preparedness, not prediction. It's about realistically kind of managing our unknown, uncertain, and then of course, taking all of those deep insights that we kind of gather along the way and helping transform them into these sound strategies and actions that can help build resiliency, help us stay ahead, and I guess most importantly, help us shape the future that we want, kind of amongst kind of all this ongoing change. I guess one thing to really keep in mind is that the practice of foresighting doesn't really have to sit in thinking about the far future. It can actually build immense benefits for the present as well. And so I'm kind of looking forward to kind of walking through what that means for the space enterprise in the near term. And for those that maybe they're not space gurus or having a hard time kind of grasping this, I think many of us are practicing strategic foresighting right now in our daily lives, right? There's
Absolutely.
Like this combination,
that's what I'm thinking.
right? If you need to eat, if you need toilet paper, if you have kids, right? You are probably practicing strategic foresighting just because there's so much that's changing, right? So it's like this combination of, anticipating and planning ahead across uncertainty, but then adjusting in real time and having the tools to adjust in real time. And so I'm almost thinking this is a really interesting window for all of us to experience foresighting and the skills of the future in this really tough time, but we should think of it as almost training wheels for what's to come.
Yeah, and bringing that from like a daily life that people, are probably doing on a regular basis, especially now with the way that the rate at which change seems to be happening and unpredicted, like you said. It's about, it's not about prediction, but yeah, change. So you're taking that, something that we do on a small scale, and you're bringing it to the enterprise level for customers.
Yep, that's exactly what we're doing. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's tell us about the graphic.
There's kind of three different points on the graphic. There's foresight, insight to action, and that's kind of what we look at in the foresighting circles as we call it the FIA cycle. And at its fundamental level, foresighting really is kind of scanning the horizon for emerging areas of change. The insight portion really is trying to get the right people, the right tools together to synthesize what those could mean, essentially the so what behind those changes. And then the action piece, which, arguably is the hardest part, is making meaningful kind of near-term action that can really drive towards wanting your desirable outcomes in the future. And this is a continual process. It's something that really needs to almost live in the organizational DNA for it to function well, because things are constantly changing. And so this is something that you're living and breathing in a variety of timelines and cycles. But, most pragmatically, we see a lot of this being synced up with things like strategic planning cycles or budget cycles, when you're looking at how, organizations and governments function. And this really is, the foundation of what foresighting is. And it seems very simplistic at first glance, but it requires kind of immense dedication and intellectual capital to really navigate through that uncertainty. And then, of course, leadership, right, to take action when you're identifying potential opportunities and challenges that await ahead. And you want to be more proactive about approaching the future and not just reactive when things kind of happen. So that really is fundamentally, the basics of foresighting, and looking forward to kind of walking through how we can apply that to thinking about space.
Yeah, well, you talked about how this this kind of triangular graphic shows the cycle, and it looks very basic at first, but your team did this awesome Pathfinder's guide, a little hat tip to Hitchhiker's Guide, but it's very complex at first glance. And so I'm looking forward to you kind of talking through that and kind of simplifying it a little bit and allowing us to kind of delve into some of those possible futures and how to maybe not influence them, I suppose influence them. But yeah, so I think we can bring that up, the map. People can take a look. It's like a big trifold. You can print it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for folks that don't know, we'll put a link, to the video here, but you can actually go to our website and download your own. It's high res, so you can go and get it professionally printed. Originally when we created this map, this was kind of pre-pandemic. And so we were hoping we could hand this out and have people put it up on, on their offices when they get to work. But the great thing is, the future, a lot of the work we did was I think, it's going to stand the test of time for a long time. And so we'll be able to print this out and use it in a variety of ways. But it's really, we're really excited about it. So our Pathfinder's Guide really was supposed to be kind of both a pragmatic and fun project to really energize the senses and the imaginations and get the broader kind of space ecosystem thinking just like what possibilities may lie ahead. It's not necessarily comprehensive or necessarily prescriptive about what will happen. It's just supposed to start stimulating thinking about the possibilities. So we had over 70 subject matter experts and kind of thought leaders within the space enterprise help in its creation, which was like so incredible and exciting. And I don't think there's anything really that's been done like this before. So we're really just excited to kind of finally get this out and start sharing it. And we view this as like the spark of the conversation, not necessarily, this is the answer. This is supposed to be the start of the conversation. And so also something really to note is that everything that is in the map was initially grounded in signals that are either early indicators or already transpiring today. So it's really founded in the practice of foresighting, and we're really proud of that. So for example, we actually have global pandemic as a potential shock to the space enterprise. And we actually identified that well in advance before, the worldwide debut of COVID-19. But I think it's important for us to kind of reflect on that for a moment, right? Like, who would have thought that we seriously would consider this low likelihood, high impact event before it happened, and that doing so would be a valuable exercise. But yet here we are today. So I think as a practicing futurist, I find this time extraordinarily humbling, but it's also, I think, a stark message for all of us to be really vigilant about maintaining our bearings in this ever-changing world.
So yeah, what are some emerging themes that you see on the map? Can you just, I don't know, pick a what if for us and walk us through it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we probably want to just like also just make a note to the folks here. The map actually it doesn't look in any particular time frame per se. It thinks about developments in waves. And so we looked at kind of 3 waves across 7 themes, and I'll get to what those are here in a second. But, obviously in our discussion today, we're kind of more focused on that nearer term, right? That year to year, 2020 to 2021. But it's really important to start thinking about, okay, well, what's on the other side of these waves of development? So you can almost think of our conversation today as like almost a bit of micro futuring, right? Looking in the nearer term, but again, thinking with that longer term in mind. So we explored from all of the various kind of investigations and workshops and experts, we explored and kind of condensed into 7 core themes. And those are namely intelligence, infrastructure, conflict, players, workforce, resources, access, and exploration. And these really provide, I think, a really nice framing for how we think about the key forces that will shape the future, and quite frankly, that are already shaping, the current enterprise as it stands.
Yeah, no, and we have those up, and you're gonna kind of walk us through each of those, aren't you?
Yes, so. I am. Yeah, I guess maybe also before that, we want to think about kind of across all of these themes, what are some macro level factors that are also kind of shaping the environment, right? So, the US, obviously, we have a new incoming administration, and so that we're going to likely see some new shift in initiatives and priorities with respect to space, as well as many other areas. We've just released a new national space policy. We've seen, in this last several years, and looking for this to continue, is, an increase in challenging and complex geopolitical competition, and how that's evolving across this interwoven world. We've seen an increase in climate change and extreme weather impacts, and those are likely going to increasingly cause disruptions and create new problems to grapple with, such as food insecurity and civil unrest. But even amidst kind of like all of these things, the markets have performed extraordinarily well. But no doubt there's going to be some economic uncertainty as we look forward. And so I think we have to really think about, how does all of these other macro level things really play into how space is going to look? And are those impacts going to be, negative or positive? As always, life is a mix of both. Are the, great innovations and pushes and advancement in capability, and then the combination of lowering costs and barriers to entry with increasing demand and value proposition, going to enable the space enterprise to kind of leverage the moment to shine and lean into this environment while it's being demanded for? And this could really help accelerate the transition and help, I think, to more sustainable kind of commerce ecosystem, and, hopefully eventually human sustained presence in space. And I think that, even though we're thinking nearer term, this is a really critical year coming up for hopefully getting through to that next level for kind of sustained space presence.
And so your first theme then is the kind of intelligence category.
Yeah. So we first looked at intelligence infrastructure, and just, wanted to highlight a couple of things again, kind of in the last year, that might spark some interesting insights into what might come in the future. So obviously, we've been seeing several advancements in what's called proliferated LEO, low Earth orbit, in 2020. So SpaceX just marked its successful launch for over 900 Starlink satellites in orbit, with more to come. There's also several other organizations internationally that are planning on launching thousands of satellites in LEO in the next coming years. And so we're already seeing these benefits of this enhanced kind of connectivity and speed services that are being provided around the world. I think a real critical question is, what are those future jewels that might be held as 5G expands and connects, the space with the rest of the world of Internet of Things? How will this set of increasing number of remote sensing and analytic companies deliver value to these everyday citizens? We're also seeing a really big push in technological advancements in areas like digital engineering and digital twins. And those are really making great headway, I think, in how we might transform the way we engineer and model and test and field new capabilities for the space enterprise. And we're also looking at new areas such as neuromorphic computing, which, if for those of you that don't know, it really mimics the brain's efficiencies for neurobiological architectures. And I think a combination of all these things could lay the foundation for really fast and autonomous analysis of a vast array of incoming information from multiple sources. So all these things are happening kind of in real time. They haven't necessarily come knocking on our door and arrived in a split moment. They're kind of slowly bleeding their way in. But one day we're going to wake up and realize like we have the infrastructure that's here that could radically transform this connectivity that we've been seeing over the last several years building up.
Yeah, and there are things, the connectivity is happening just in time in terms of what happened this year with the pandemic, and the fact that we were still able to kind of, some hiccups in certain industries, of course, but that a large percentage of people were still able to work from home. That kind of
and it's an interesting time, I think, to think about it too, because in the 80s, there were several very smart people who were quoted as thinking, no person would ever need a personal computer. And yet here we are today, literally carrying the most powerful computers around in our pockets. And so I think, again, thinking about the convergence of all these capabilities and technologies and the way that we flow and how the markets are evolving, we're clearly on a precipice for another like upswing of transformation, and what that's going to look like clearly will involve, connectivity and Internet of Things. There's a big push, right, for AR, VR technology and all the data that comes with it. Nobody's quite clear what those markets are going to look like yet. There's a lot of moving pieces, but we're definitely going to see that pan out here in the next few years. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the next big app that it's going to take. Like maybe on your mobile phone, we can have like 3D images, and we could watch our movies, watch our movies, or even talk to our friends, but they're like 3D hologram things. That'd be great.
Yes, that'd be, and then you could like, virtual high five people. And I would love to be able to like have my mom cook Thanksgiving dinner and I could, experience it virtually. I'm still waiting for that one. I had to cook this year and I was not happy about it.
Yeah, I guess right? We could even do smells.
Yeah, and smells as well. And there are already plenty of technologies that allow for that to happen. It's just scaling it economically. Well, we probably should move on because we have 7 themes. And
sorry, yes.
2021 is quickly approaching. So the next area we kind of looked at was conflict. And this is really, we mean conflict in a very kind of macro level. I think a lot of folks, when they think about conflict, they're thinking about, war or some sort of military application, which is absolutely relevant in this area. But this could also be competition, and competition commercially, competition with other parties and interests. And so these really reflect kind of the modalities and the landscapes that change continuously and at exponential speed, especially when we're thinking about the future. And, no doubt conflict and competition are really an inevitable part of the human story. So as we're thinking about, how space is developing, conflict has to be part of, what we think about. And these could be driven, again, by both, national or corporate interests in areas like, we've already seen in the past with, spectrum allocation and space traffic management, different perspectives on policy and how we run norms of behavior in space, and how do we treat intellectual property. So I think all of these areas kind of are enveloped in this kind of conflict circle of gravity. And just a couple of things to reflect on in this area that might be impacting, how this looks in the future. We all know Space Force just recently celebrated its first birthday and is very much at the dawn of defining its new role as guardians, right? So that's, something that we clearly, started because we wanted to shape a more peaceful, prosperous future of space as all these other capabilities are coming up on board, all these other parties. And I think this is a good way of kind of showing the leadership there for the space domain. We've also been kind of recognizing that speed could arguably be the new resiliency in the future. And so we've seen entities like DARPA and the Space Development Agency and the Space Rapid Capability Office and several others, who are really working hard to prove out this model. So in the near term, we're going to see how these new initiatives change the competition game, potentially bringing faster and more resilient, less expensive capability to end users. And of course, all of that paving the way for yielding promising new approaches to fielding future capability. So that could be really, I think, exciting for us to watch kind of in the near term as we think about conflict moving forward.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how, it's not going to be in 2021 that it happens right away, but I'm curious to see how kind of best practices, norms, rules of the road move from a kind of earthbound domestic entity into space where, you know, you're obviously protecting property that is that has ownership, but also you're going to be protecting, you know, resources on the moon, and the moon is unclaimed, and just how that's all going to work out. Yeah.
Well, if you know, they always say a great futurist looks back at least twice as long as they want to look forward, and so we know how it worked in history, and there were many exciting stories to be told there as well. And you have to also think about, you know, how does that role look when we have civilians in space? You know, do we need search and rescue? Do we need, you know, gas stations? All the things, right, that we have here as infrastructure. We might just need them in space, and I can tell you, I don't want to be going in space if there's no pizza. I mean, that's a long, you know, that's a long stint to have without you know, some sort of you know, place to, you know, eat pizza or some sort of fast food. So there's lots of things to think about when we think about you know, the infrastructure piece of this.
Lots of things.
Yeah, I think that's like a great segue into our other theme that we explored, which was players, right? So traditionally we think of, you know, nation states and kind of like, you know, large behemoth companies that have been traditionally in space since the 60s, but that just really is no longer true. I mean, there are already today in the present, you know, many international players, lots of companies, small and large, so, you know, civilians. We have grade school kids like launching satellites, right? So that's happening today. So what does the future look like? Where are the kinds of explorers and entrepreneurs, and, you know, what role are they going to have as innovators, and what are government leaders going to look like, and service providers, and all of the other societal elements, you know, the entertainment industry, for example. You know, in 2019, Space Angels actually had a report that was released that showed that venture capitalists invested $5.8 billion into 178 commercial startups worldwide. That was an increase of 38% from 2018. Like, that is just astonishing. And I think we've seen some really exciting mergers and acquisitions of new entrants, which is all a good sign. We're all looking for that healthy kind of signal that the space sector is maturing and growing. And we've also seen this strengthening of international presence, because space has a value proposition that everybody is really starting to pick up and recognize. It's adding this richness, you know, all the way from, you know, observing, remote sensing, and pulling all the data to communications, and providing immense data and insights that they can't get anywhere else. And so we're starting to see players that we normally wouldn't expect, because space is becoming increasingly more accessible, both from a launch standpoint, but also from a data standpoint. We've also seen a lot of these like new innovative partnerships and collaborations. There was actually a joint space day just recently between the US and the UK government, and they're really pushing hard to yield real transformation through these partnerships. And then, of course, we've seen incredible developments in this growing shared economy, with things like ground station as a service and software as a cloud, and cloud is all driving more and more streamlined, efficient operations. And also, space is this huge desire to entertain us. We kicked off the year, I was really excited about this one, with Hilton baking the first cookies in space aboard the International Space Station. Let's not forget, you know, the comedy series about the Space Force. And of course, we look forward to having movies and even a recently announced reality TV show here in the next few years. So there's a lot of breadth and richness in the players involved in space that we don't normally think about. So I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, no, it's great. And as it's getting, you know, more accessible to more people, that seems to be when the innovation really kicks off. And so, I think it'll be really interesting. And then the partnerships that you mentioned, you know, the kind of international partnerships, I think, are key to any of this, because, you know, we're all in it together in terms of what space gives us. Like, you know, it improves our lives on Earth every day in terms of weather prediction or, you know, tracking migrations.
And if our audience is like, I didn't know this, you know, the Policy Center, right, just released a great paper called The Value of Space, which really highlights just the incredible aspects of, like, again, if you drive on the road, if you eat food, like, you're life is
farming,
impacted by space every day, and many of us don't know it. Yeah. So absolutely. I think it's a big one. And it's also interesting to think about how much more value and what future jewels will be there. Space will be bringing back to humanity and mankind here on Earth.
Right. So, and you're talking players, and there's all these new entrants, and it's really exciting about what's going to be happening in the future. But there's also the whole workforce, which is another theme in your map. But it's kind of different players and stuff. So tell us about that one.
Yeah. And we really wanted to have like a separate section completely dedicated to thinking about like how the future of the workforce was going to be delivering capability to the space enterprise, kind of separate from the players. It's a really important area, and it could radically shift, I think, from where we are today. We've seen a lot of just incredible resilience and flexibility in the current workforce, kind of, amidst all of the pandemic issues, and also just the greater incorporation of this digital connectivity and more innovative work models, which I think has really served us well. We've also seen another wave and push for equality and inclusivity and diversity, which of course can only strengthen the talent and bright minds that are being brought to the space table. So I'm really excited to see that. And then of course, all of these new kind of ideas and business models that are kind of being fielded by, again, startups and academia and, a wide variety, I think, of sourcing talent, which is just bringing, I think, more vibrancy, to the table. So again, all really good things that we're seeing. And of course, we have to focus on education, right? And preparing the future workforce. And we've seen online degree programs and of course, a variety of kind of like continued education programs that are online, a variety of kind of very accessible kind of tutorials and certificate programs that are really changing the way we think and work for the space enterprise. And so we've moved from a very, traditional, you go through college, you get a master's or PhD in rocket science, and then you go do that, to there's just a wider range. As I had mentioned before, we would literally have grade school students participating in space now, which is so exciting.
Yeah, and you were, I think, I found some kind of neat things when I look closely at the Pathfinders guide, that you talk about, what if the future workforce, it's all done through avatars? What if it's all virtual reality workplaces, and then in terms of learning and the future of the workforce, our young people that are kind of up and coming, they're going to start learning in more virtual environments with the 3D hologram teacher on the phone.
Yeah, Colleen, I like your future. I like where it's going, and I could see it being like really exciting to be like, again, you learn by practicing, right? And so if there's ways you can do that in a virtual environment where you're in space interacting with the exact hardware or software as a real-time learning experience, imagine just how fast and how much we're going to learn and how much we're going to help transform capability with these new types of interfaces. Imagine having, an artificial intelligence assistant that can help you with all of these tasks so that you can really focus on the hard, complex problems, creative problems. I think I would love to have, right, like an extended network of AIs that could help work some of my other issues so I can really focus on the things that matter. That would be incredible. So, and I could see this really playing a role in education. I think we're thinking very narrowly right now about how we're educating and how we're building a workforce. And there's a lot of, I think, of opportunity in this area when we start thinking about seeding the future.
Yes, definitely. And so, well, the workforce is, human capital is a resource, but you also have a larger theme of resources, kind of more tactile resources. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I guess we should probably think about this in two ways. One is the physical, but the other is the virtual, and both of these are what we, kind of view as the space-based jewels to fuel the exploration, development, and benefits, again, that we're bringing back to Earth and mankind. And there's been some really exciting developments.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? Sorry.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the word jewel a couple times. Can you explain to us what that means, what you mean by that?
I think those are really like the most precious hidden treasures and, values that are bringing humanity what didn't exist before, right? So again, you think about the immense capability that GPS, that remote sensing, that is bringing to a wide variety of, energy, manufacturing, food supply, like literally everything. And that is a jewel because it's something that is embedded in our daily lives. It's bringing immense value. And to be honest, that kind of happened serendipitously, right? Those capabilities were put up not necessarily with the full understanding of what could come. It was a combination of other factors and emergent behaviors with technology and markets that really drove these jewels to come to fruition. And so when I say jewels, I mean things that we may not see so clearly now, right? They're not necessarily being predictable, but we're thinking about, as these opportunities are coming up and they converge, what new value is that bringing for humanity? That's what I mean. Hopefully I clarified that a bit.
No, thank you. Thanks. And so you were talking about jewels coming back from space.
Yes. Yeah. Well, both. Also, what space could provide in sense of more, philosophical jewels for humanity. But yeah, there's been some really exciting developments. Actually, China just recently had their Chang'e 5 craft return from the moon with lunar samples, and there's a lot of exciting things when we're studying what could be on the moon, including things like helium-3 and other resources that could allow for kind of limitless energy. And quite frankly, there are limited resources that we have here on Earth. We also can think about resources as physical, spaces. Space traffic management is a huge issue, obviously, that we're kind of undergoing now, especially as we're starting to really put up a lot more things in space. And we don't have a great track record for thinking about natural resources and conserving them here on Earth. There's an obvious real concern with space traffic management. And of course, probability of collisions only going to increase. And it could be a nearer term or a future for our problem. But until it happens, it's going to be more difficult, I think, to wake people up and put the proper mitigations in place. I think that's another area where we really need to be thinking about, space as a resource and treating it kind of like accordingly. On the flip side, space can be used in terms of understanding how humans are impacting and changing our global environment, and hopefully give us insight into how we might be able to greater understand and create kind of measures and maybe even move towards healing our planet, creating more sustainable, long-term kind of collective solutions for humanity writ large. And space just offers such a unique vantage point for helping solve some of these really complex problems. I think another area to think about as well, which many people jump to, is thinking about the role that additive manufacturing is going to be providing kind of novel ways to build and construct where you can't ship materials, where those materials don't exist, quite frankly. And so printing kind of these components and systems on demand can really provide, I think, an exciting lens into the future of resources.
No, it is exciting. I remember, talking to somebody and kind of the scenario of a long-term trip to Mars, and you need to fix something. You just print the tool that you need. You screw in you bolt it in a little bit better or tighten the bolt, and then you just put the tool back into the bucket, and you can reprint something else, another tool that you need at another point. Yeah, so it's kind of exciting. Yeah. And so that gives us, in terms of space traffic management and trying to take care of those precious orbit spaces that we need for a lot of, data collections and remote sensing. Talking about access was another theme of yours. So access to space, and I'm thinking LEO as well as beyond, of course, right?
Well, of course. And same thing, we kept trying to pull the thread on, like, it's not just the physical, tangible access, it's also the virtual, right? Delivery, usage, and connectivity to space. From Earth to space, but also intra-space. And I think that's important for us to think about as well, because today there's really limited intra-space needs, but that could, again, significantly change. And how do we think about the intra-space access You know, I guess, most obviously we can talk about physical space flight, and private space flight really is just getting started. We've had a really exciting year. And we have a lot of exciting things kind of to come. So Blue Origin's about to debut its new orbital class, New Glenn. SpaceX had another stellar year of launches under its belt, and more to come. Actually, it was, their recent launch was just of their commercial space program was just like such a highlight for me in this 2020 year. It was really kind of a beacon of hope. Boeing's also looking ahead to kind of add itself to the human commercial spaceflight party with their Starliner. And then, of course, ULA is planning on debuting its Vulcan rocket. So we've seen all of these kind of advancements, as well as the small launch community really across the globe, making quite a ride and an exciting year ahead. So lots to kind of keep abreast of and kind of look out for in the next year. We've also seen kind of on the virtual side really steady advancements in artificial intelligence and artificial reality and virtual reality, as well as quantum. We're still a bit of ways off, but there's been some really interesting advancements that could potentially kind of drive that future access to space from a digital backbone. And that's, I think, a whole slew of opportunities, again, that we haven't really thought through, but there could be quite a lot of interesting areas where we, over time incrementally fuse together over the next few years. But that really could drive some transformational emergent capability for space in the long run.
No, that's great. So this brings us to the final theme, that of exploration, which we've got NASA doing its thing this year, as you were talking about, for the moon, on Mars, and I noticed that in terms of exploration, there is like crossover with, say, access. If we, on your map, what if we develop a warp drive? What is that going to mean for access and exploration? So tell us about the final theme.
Yeah. And that's what the other thing too is, like, all of these themes are intentionally not meant to be talked about like on their own. They're all interconnected, and
Right.
and there are convergence points across all of these themes. It's just a way to kind of frame our thinking systematically, when we're talking about the future. But that's the great part about all of it, is that it's all connected. So yeah, I think as we're, again, looking at some of the things kind of coming up in 2021, we've seen a lot of, pushes to the moon, which I had kind of talked about, but Mars is also a focus. There were 3 missions kind of launched this year by China, United Arab Emirates, and of course, United States. And then there's several planned missions over the next couple of years between ESA, Japan, and India. So there's a lot of pushes, beyond just the moon, and a lot of activity going on that we're all kind of keeping our radar with. There's also something really exciting, and I've been tracking this for a long time, which is the James Webb Telescope. It just hit a key test milestone, and it's getting ready to launch to L2 next year. It is a truly remarkable international endeavor. It includes over 258 unique companies and organizations, and it's going to help us peer beyond our galaxy into our potential past and help us understand the future story of mankind in the universe. It's absolutely inspirational. I am so excited to kind of see this lift off next year, and definitely something I'll be watching.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it is all very exciting, and I appreciate you coming today and kind of getting all of our juices flowing and getting us thinking about what's next and how 2021 might pan out differently than 2020. Do you have any parting words?
Please. Well, yeah, I mean, here, I think we're all not sad to see 2020 go. But I would like to take just this singular moment to pose a challenge for all of us listening. I think as we kind of look ahead to 2021, let's head into that new year by more intently incorporating the long view and how we approach decisions in the present. With every step we are taking, are we seeding a better future for the space enterprise and for humanity with the actions that we're taking in the present? And hopefully, if we do this right, then this time next year, as we're sitting here chatting, hopefully next to each other in the same room.
Right.
We'll all be happy that we did this, that we'll be happy that we really had thought through seeding our future and more proactively paving our preferred future, just, rather than kind of rolling through the punches. And so I guess maybe that's the big aha and challenging, challenge that we have moving into 2021 that I have for everybody. But yeah, just wishing 2021 is filled with peace and great strides for mankind. And please stay curious, everyone. And Colleen, I think we should send everybody off with a big, bold, Happy New Year.
Yes.
So Happy New Year, everyone. Cheers.
Happy New Year. Thank you, Kara. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
And back to you. Back to you, Rebecca. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kara, for joining us today. And thank you to our production team, James Liggins and Sarah Panoni, located in the Los Angeles area. As always, check us out on Twitter using hashtag The Space Policy Show. And you can sign up for our latest news alerts at aerospace.org/policy. We'll see you next week on January 7th for an interview with Representative Kendra Horn and Dr. Jamie Morin on the near future of space. Until then, take care.